Hello, everyone. This is our third day, and our first presenter is calling us from far, far Australia, and I believe it's really late time now, and we appreciate, Arash, you joining us. Arash is the founder and the CEO of FlexRule, and he's talk about end-to-end decision automation. So, Arash, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Thank you very much for arranging that, everyone, and thank you for attending to this conference. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So it is very exciting to be part of this community, and thank you very much for accepting our paper. Let's get it started. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides, and then we are going to show you also some real examples that we have as part of this presentation. So what we are going to discuss today is in the world of the infinite and frequent changes, how and why organizations can increase business agility with the end-to-end decision automation. So based on our experience across many different industries, we found there are key areas of the change organizations require to adopt when it comes to automating operational decisions. So the first key area is market dynamics and volatility, which put pressure to companies to provide highly customized services and products for mass personalization. So individuals have their own situation, which enforces more and put pressure in automating operational decisions, specifically situation-aware decisions. And as you can see on my screen, 58% of countries now using telemedicine, which means there is a vast majority of personalizations required for this kind of services. The second source of the change is the policy and regulation, which defines how companies can operate based on internal, external policies, as well as regulation. And it's not hidden to everyone that how complex is this area. And it is very expensive to make sure companies are compliant with regulations and having their own internal, external policies also aligned. As you can see also, KPMG reports $300 billion yearly companies spend to make sure they are aligned with the compliance and regulations. And the third source of the change is data and information. And the changes that we discussed regarding the market volatility and market dynamics, as well as policy and legislations, they do not sit in isolation. They require input data, they require transformation, they require access to the information systems. And based on what you can see on the screen, Forbes reported 36% of companies do not use all the data they own. Now, when we look at all different aspects of these required changes, and when we look at the definition of the business agility, what we can see is if we start building automated decisions and we make sure that these operational decisions, as Jacob also has in some part of the presentation, externalized from processes and applications, we can technically help organizations to increase business agility. But there are some challenges in doing that so. And the problem or the challenge is these operational decisions and the requirements for automating operational decisions are scattered across many different areas in the rules, in the data, in the processes, in information systems, etc., which day-to-day operation of business depends on. When we increase the adoption and speed of changing the operational decisions using any tools, the important part is we need to look at the whole value chain rather than just automating the decision. When decision changes, it requires many other different components to change with those decisions to make sure those automated decisions can go and bring the value to the organizations. And in order to understand this, we need to look at the landscape of organizations for decision making. When we look at multiple different industries and when we look at organizations, we can see within organizations, the landscape is very similar to what you see on this screen. So there is application and processes across organizations in different departments. There are data everywhere in organizations regarding the information systems or even silos data sitting on the individual computers. And then there is a law and regulations that organizations need to be compliant with. And there is a disconnected knowledge, whether that's in the heads of people, whether that's in the decision software systems, and they need to use all these different components and organization capabilities to answer the business, day-to-day business questions, which is technically operational decisions they're dealing with to deliver the customer outcome. Now, there are many different options to put together different pieces of the puzzle and answer those operational decisions, as you can see. But the challenge is when the frequency of the changes increases, like the policy legislation change, or when the wide range of the customers then they need to deal with for mass personalizations, like in healthcare for telemarketing, some tools become less effective, such as building those decisions inside application, Excel, RPA, etc. So there are more specialty tools like decision management suites and business rules management system and help them to address these challenges. Having said that, there are still, when the decision changes, there are many different areas regarding that decision change that still needs to be covered outside of the operation. When we're talking about business agility, meaning operation team, whether that's the business operation or digital operation or however you want to call it, digital ops, business ops, they need to have the ability to make sure they can deploy all the required changes, all the components. And when we look at the current organizations, the challenge is when the decision changes, the new field of information requires for the data inputs, carrying out the action based on the decision results and integrating them back into information systems and processes still is required, and accessing and aggregating data and processes and build the information and valid context for decision making still requires. So these are the challenges still needs to be addressed, as well as changing the decision based on different criteria, different rules, and different situations. So there is a gap to cover, and in order to understand how to cover this gap, we need to better understand the mechanics of decision making. And one of the best ways we found out to explain the mechanics of decision making is using the decision cycle called OODA loop. For the most of the people probably know about the OODA loop, but the people that they don't know, it stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. This is based on the military strategist and United States Air Force, John Boyd, for applying operation in combat operation. Now, I go a little bit details in the OODA loop, and I cover multiple different stages and explaining the responsibility of each stage, and then I'll talk about how end-to-end decision automation can cover the full cycle of the decision. So OODA loop has 4 stages, as you can see on the screen: Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. It's a nonlinear decision cycle, and it has multiple reverse transitions as well as feedback. And the first stage for the OODA loop, if we go to the next slide, you can see on the screen, the first stage is Observe. The responsibility of the Observe is to connect to multiple different data sources, to look for triggers and patterns, to understand and listen to the business events. And these are all raw data that we are collecting. And we can talk about the different types of data and data sources, but keep in mind, more often than not, when we're in organizations, there are sources of the data that cannot be accessed simply using API call or database connection, etc. Like you have people going to information systems, collect the data, and we can automate that in the observe stage of OODA loop using robotics, which we have examples in a couple of next slides. When the raw data is collected, then it goes to the orient stage. This is one of the most important stage in the OODA loop. The responsibility for this stage is to create a valid context using the raw data, data transformation, extrapolation, prediction, whatever the techniques it is required to create a valid context for taking the decision. And this is important, especially for situation-aware decisions. After the context is created, then we go to the next stage, which is the decide stage. This is mostly the work within the BRMS and DMS and all the relevant tools is what's happening at this stage, allowing you to model different types of decision, execute and manage them within an existing context. And this allows you to build different types of decision-making methods, whether that is top-down approach using rules-driven AI, ML algorithms, or analytical-driven decision. It is all happening at that stage using the valid context that was created in the previous stage. And once the decision's been executed and the outcome of the decision is resolved, it's going to go to the next stage, which is the act stage. The responsibility of this stage is to carry out the actions and tasks based on the outcome of the decisions from previous stage. As you can see now, based on the 4 stages of the OODA loop, decision modeling and decision execution, business rules modeling, all of them are happening inside the decide stage. And we need to have a solution. When we're talking about the end-to-end solution, we need to put the solution in the hands of the people in operation to cover the whole different stages of the decision cycle, observe, orient, as well as decide and act as well. And the business decisions are critical to business operations. Modeling and executing them independently is a necessity, which is more about the decide stage. But what we found is it becomes critically important for businesses to be able to adapt to changes across 4 stages of the decision cycle frequently and independently across the operation team, biz ops and digital ops. Therefore, a framework and platform to support the full decision cycle is critical, and decision-centric approach considers the OODA loop for a full cycle of automating operational decisions. Decision-centric approach is a methodology that brings process, data, people, rules together to ensure organizations consistently can make optimized, customer-centric, situation-aware business decisions while they meet their business objective regarding revenue, risk, and cost reduction. And it is all about decisioning. And for this reason, we talk about different types of decisioning, but the top-down approach using decisions requirement diagram allows you to bring together multiple types of decision, and then the decision logic can be implemented in different ways, whether that's the rule-driven, the natural language rules modeling, analytical algorithm, AR predictions, or even more procedural approach, process flow, decision flow, etc. But all of them come together as a high level, as a hierarchy of the decisions with the decision-centric approach using decisions requirement diagram, which makes the decisions the first-class citizen of organizations, allowing digital ops and biz ops model explicitly operational decisions and their implementation using different types of decision logic. Now, as we discussed, because of the frequency of the changes and all the requirements for mass personalization regarding the data and regarding how we can deal with different components of those decisions, the end-to-end decision capability requires multiple different components. As you can see on this screen, orchestration and robotics is one component. Advanced data integration and processing to build the valid context is another component. We're talking about, in this instance, observe and orient stage. And then business roles and decision management, of course, in the decide, and orchestration and robotics covers the act stage as well. Now, in this presentation, we're going to focus on orchestration and robotics as well as decision modeling. And we have a couple of slides and examples regarding these capabilities that we discussed. We need to have to ensure we can support the full cycle decision in operation rather than depending on different departments. End-to-end decision automation requires orchestration, as we mentioned, based on our experience. And when we're talking about orchestration and decisioning, there are two types of decisioning. So we're talking about, first one, long-running decisioning, which what it means is in order to resolve the decision outcome, the decision goes to dormant state multiple times until the decision result is resolved. And that may take days, weeks, or months. It depends on the type of the decision. Another type of decisions we're talking about is that the transient decisioning. And what that means is the decisions do not go to the any dormant state. They start and they finish, and the decision outcome will be resolved. So there are two types of decision we're talking when we're talking about requirements for orchestration. And with having the orchestration in place, the end-to-end decision automation can support for fully automated decisions. We include the robotics as well in that area, or semi-automated decisions, which involve human intervention for overriding decisions or, for example, for handling exceptions, etc. And both of them together then in the hands of operation team enables them to increase true business agility. In next couple of slides, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. To give you the context for this first example, this is about a decision regarding the loan application. It looks like a process in the eyes of process people. From our experience, this is not necessarily about the process. This is an orchestration about the decision, because at the end of the day, it is about the decision whether we want to give a loan to a person or not. So in this specific example, we're using a long-running decisioning. As you can see, it is long-running because in the screen, you can see in 3 different points in this particular orchestration, the orchestration goes to dormant using external events or time-based events or human intervention if that's needed at some stage. So this kind of the requirement for long-running decisioning can be handled in the orchestration layer, as you can see on the screen, for long-running decisioning. Now, when inside this long-running decisioning, we have also fully automated decisions. For example, as you can see in the screen, in the first step in this decision, the automated decision identifies whether we should decline the applicant straight away or not, and if we can continue with that applicant. Later on, when we have the data collected from the bureau, we're going to determine whether we can accept the application straight away, which it goes to a final decision using fully automated decision. using decisions requirement diagram, top-down approach, and multiple different ways of implementing the decision logic, or if we cannot decide whether straight away, we can go for the human intervention as part of the orchestration. So it assigns the task to the group to review this specific applicant. When we're talking about the fully automated decisions, this is very interesting for us because when we have multiple hierarchy of the decisions doing different things, it is a very common requirement when there is a shared or common decisions needs to be shared across multiple different decisions requirement diagram. This generally can be done using deploying that common decisions as a service. But as all we know, there is a strong correlation between the complexity needs to be handled and number of the decision services. So sometimes it is not necessary to deploy the decision as a service to make sure to share the common logic. The other way is using the sub-DRD and decision module in this specific case to share this common logic, which is, again, another decisions requirement diagram within the decisions requirement, automated full decisions. That reduces the complexity of managing decisions. Also, decision, when they are deployed as a service, not only complicates the management of infrastructure and services, also there's a latency. So to avoid all of that, we can use sub-DRD decision module to share the common decisions between these two automated decisions. The other example I want to show you here is regarding the transient orchestration. In this specific case, give you context, this is regarding the bringing suppliers on a retailer shop. The first step of orchestration requires someone goes to a website and puts the supplier information, make sure they have a registered valid company ID. But that itself, because it requires that manual task, it actually can use the power of the decision robotics here in the orchestration to automate the entire orchestration fully automated. So the decision robotics allows you to go to mimic the user behavior. So it goes to the website, puts the information of the supplier in, ensures the information is valid, goes back to the orchestration and continues down the automated decisions using the decisions requirement diagram to decide how to deal with this particular supplier to bring them on board. As you can see, the decision, transient decision or long-range decision happening inside the orchestration using fully automated or semi-automated decision capability. As we discussed now, the end-to-end decisions requires 3 different components: orchestration robotics, advanced data integration and processing, business rules, and decision management all together can now allow the operation team to take care of all different stages within the operation rather than relying on different departments, data engineers, software developers, IT, to ensure they can consistently, frequently, independently manage the entire decision lifecycle. End-to-end decision automation empower organizations to increase business agility by giving them the control of the full decision cycle. With that, I have finished my presentation and I can answer any question. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Arash. There is a question from Jacob. He's put on the Slack channel. He said he really likes the long-running decisioning and wants to know if you have a specific example that you use in your actual practice, and if so, what tools that you use for orchestration, time management, and state transformation.
Thank you very much, Sandy, and thank you, Jacob, for the question. So all the models that I showed you here is based on FlexRule. So FlexRule supports all different type of orchestration, long-range decisioning, and transient decisioning, and it supports different types of handling the events, external events, time-based events, etc. So all the models I showed you in this presentation is based on Flex rule. Hope that answers the question.
No, but did you actually build any long-running decisioning system?
Yeah, absolutely. So the example is actually a custom credit scoring that we do for some couple of organizations in financial industry. So the long-range decisioning involves the automated decision regarding the credit scoring, but when it goes to the custom credit scoring part, it requires multiple different input at different point of time, and then that is when the long-range decisioning come in place. So it does the automated decisioning, it waits for the bureau data to come in, it goes to the custom scoring, and it waits for the approval if, for example, the scoring doesn't meet the criteria for giving the loan out to that specific applicant.
But probably,
that's actually a valid.
Did you use any existing framework? You said everything in Flex rule. Do you provide pub sub infrastructure, time management yourself?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So Flex rule supports both the long-running and transient decisioning itself at the modeling level rather than infrastructure level.
Okay, because you touch this and you introduce this nice term, long-running decisioning, probably it's not only a question to you. We already discussed integration with machine learning, and what happened recently with machine learning, that's exactly what you pointed to. Machine learning considers themselves not like one-time operation, it's always in ever running loop, right? And it keeps learning and learning, otherwise it does not make sense. I believe the same thing should happen with decisioning. It's strange that we so far considered only one run and gone. So this is what you call the long running, probably it should be called ever running decisioning, and we need to look on infrastructure that supports this, and I don't think it should come from rules vendors, it's coming from infrastructure vendors when we have all components. And by the way, I want to suggest, if you already did it, look on DM community challenge that has dynamic loan approval, and two solutions that provided, it's a one-time solution. But we really need to put the state machines and to show long-term, because this is a good example of what you just demonstrated. So if you can submit the solution, it would be nice.
Absolutely. I'll share the solution maybe by tomorrow with you. And we can share more models in Flex rule with you regarding that decision. Absolutely. And you're pointing out a very valid point. So as I discussed in the end-to-end decision cycle, so there are 4 stages and multiple reverse transition and feedback loops. So that is what is going to happen when you put the ML machine learning models into a production. So you don't want to only execute them and finish. You need, as you mentioned, the constant loop to going as a feedback loop and reverse transition to enhance the model, etc. So that covers the long-running decision, as you mentioned, a requirement for that. Absolutely.
Okay. More questions?
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions in the Slack channel or any raised hands, so I think that's it. Thank you, Arash. You can stop your screen share, and we'll get ready for the next presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.